world? We are retaping my 2-point aerial hoop today because it has not been retaped since last year's Burning Man, and we only have a couple of days before this year's Burning Man. So we're gonna start by getting her all uncrustified, and then we'll see what the damage is. It's crazy, this tape has no adhesive left and it feels like paper. Very chalky, stiff paper. If the tape strands start getting super long, it's often easier to just cut them than having to drag the entire ball around. But if it's sticky tape, sometimes you can kind of like mush it into this ball that's then easier to pull off. How often you need to retape your hoop really depends on how much you're using it, and usually what happens is that the bottom area where you grip it the most gets all torn up and has a lot of thread sticking off of it. This is obviously an extreme case because it's just coated in playa, dust and mud, and it's falling apart. So probably don't wait this long. But generally speaking, the aerial hoops that I use in my studio where there's classes happening every day, they have to get retaped every 2 to 3 weeks, depending, although sometimes you can get away with just retaping over the grip area that gets worn down the quickest. Because hoop tape can be expensive, so you don't always want to redo the entire hoop just because one little section is worn out. And I also usually overlap the bottom, but I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, about 20 minutes later, we're to the very last part of the hoop, and this is actually the only part of the tape that still has stick to it because it was like triple overlap. Beautiful. Well, not beautiful yet, but we're getting closer. Okay, so this next part is a little bit more specific to Burning Man because the amount of crap that we have on this hoop. However, if you ever need to clean your hoop, vinegar I think is the best bet because it's non-toxic, it's not going to bleach your materials, it's not going to damage things. You just want to make sure it's really dry before you retape it so you don't get rust. Okay, so obviously that was not a minute. I put it down to dry and then Burning Man took over. So now we are back. Different aerialists have preferences on tape. I like to use gymnastic tape or wrist tape. This is not kinesiology tape. It has no rubber or stretch to it. It's cotton on the outside, which can technically give you rope burn, but it also means it's gonna hold its shape a lot nicer. And you don't wanna use something like duct tape because that's really slippery, especially when your palms are sweaty, and it can also give you like a rubber burn, which is actually a lot worse. So this is also a style preference, but I don't like having those little triangles that people get below their tabs. So I'll always put a strip below, and then I'll show you guys on the other side what this is looking like. But remember that you always want the scales of your tape facing down. Pieces underneath, this part you're gonna line up with the very top of your tab. The husband is gonna take a nap because he is bored of watching me do this for so many years, right? Flap is facing down, not scale facing up, because that way it would roll and you get those like nasty sticky edges. That's people who are taping their hoop backwards because they have not thought about this. And then if you're being extra cute, you're gonna do a little patch on the top, and again, always flaps on the underside of the hoop, yeah? If it's just a training hoop, you don't need to make it look that nice, but if you're doing a photo shoot or shows, filling in those gaps can look nice. Also, I do need to retape the bridles, but I think the black tape is already packed. So same thing, you'd start at the bottom, wrap all the way up top, and then try and face the flap in an angle where you're not going to pull it down. So for me, that's usually inside of the bridles because the outside is where you're normally doing your grips and your locks. So the flap you want to put somewhere there. So just to make this fast, you will tape both of your tabs first. You're going to flip it upside down. And now here's a trick to make it last longer. Most people go from half and they do half the hoop and then half the hoop. But remember what I said about it wearing through more quickly on the bottom. So for this bottom, like quarter, I actually overlap all of the way so this is double tape. So even once you've worn through the first layer, your hoop is still usable. You're not gonna get all messed up. So flap on the bottom, you always wanna start it at an angle, that way you don't get those weird puckers in the tape. So see the tape's already fancy like that. And I did scrub the hoop down yesterday with vinegar spray. I tried to get a lot of the rust off, but obviously this hoop has a hard outdoor life. If I had more time, I'd like sand it down, high grit sandpaper, and then you can paint them. That's not gonna happen today. This hoop is gonna be a Burning Man in 48 hours. So ideally you're trying to not have any of these bubbles or wrinkles. That's gonna cause a lot more blisters and rips on your hands. And also I like to just overlap about a quarter of the tape. If you do half and half, you use way more rolls of tape, which is expensive, and also causes more ridges, and I like as few as possible. This is the only place where it gets a little bit funky. You have two choices. You can either cut the tape here, but then you have more flaps and those tend to peel up, or you do one very chosen bubble. So I'm gonna really lean it, and you're gonna have to have a bubble, but you kind of hide it underneath. You can skip it over here without cutting the tape, and you're gonna really press it flat, and it is a little bit fugly from underneath, but most people don't see it. And then same thing on the top of the hoop where you have most of your grip. I go all the way over and then all the way over. So depending on how tightly you overlap your tape, you'll either have half a roll left or less than half a roll. I do it pretty wide, so I can usually get away with doing my entire hoop once with one roll rather, but you need to test that because you really don't want to run out halfway on one of the major grip points because that piece will always peel off and then you're just constantly fixing it. So if you have any less than that, it is not going to work. True story, if you get grit in your tape, if someone puts your tape on the ground, you have ruined it. You either need to retape it or wear like extra thick knee pads. It depends on what your costume can be. Also, rhinestones will fuck you up. If there's like the glittery rhinestones on your tights, they will cut into like little pieces of glass and you will bleed through your costume. Would not recommend. So this is the bottom part of the hoop where we're doing the overlap, right? So same thing at an angle, and if you look really close, you can actually tell the tape is a little bit darker color here because it's the only part where it overlaps. If it's white tape, you can really see, so you almost have to double wrap the whole hoop. That's just a style preference though. Okay everyone, this is my mom. She's also part of the vlog. Everyone has now participated.
Hi everybody.
So same thing on the last part of this bridle. Going to very strategically kind of hide the flap. I don't know if you can see from where you are. You don't want to go up on the tab because this is always going to roll down and it's going to catch a bunch of like lint shit off your costume. So you try and pinch it down. And then again on the top, we double it up. Oh, also, unless you have a white hoop that's brand new, I don't recommend using regular chalk or liquid chalk on your hoop because you're going to get these big handprints all over it. Depends on the aesthetic. It will also then transfer to your costume. So because I'm normally in black, if you use chalk on your hoop and then you're gonna have shitty and chalk all over you, think about it. Also, these are cotton cable core ropes, so there actually is metal on the inside, and I have a grip for a very specific move that I do. If there are sequences that you're doing that require really high overhead grip on your bridles, you can use tape like this for foot locks or knee locks. It just keeps you from getting as rope burned when you do that little like pull down. And I will replace these later.